Starliner outside the keep-out sphere, as mentioned, heading towards the approach ellipsoid, so it is moving further away from the International Space Station. Right now we're looking at about 400 and counting. The rate has increased significantly from when it was much closer to the space station. We were tracking 0.1 and 0.2 meters per second. We're at about 0.85 now. So you see after AE exit, the star ahead of it. It's about, from the time that the Starliner itself exits the up is about just a little over 3 hours.
All the hooks are closed, meaning that the entry cover is secured at the nose of Starliner, meaning that the entry cover is secured at the nose of Starliner.
Again, Star performing nominally. It's about 600 meters from the International Space Station. We were following along with some of the... It's about 600 meters from the International Space Station. We were following along with some of the cameras that are mounted on the outside of the International. The exposure of the sun is... it's hard to get a good lock on the vehicle. Of the sun is... it's hard to get a good lock on the vehicle right now, but we are getting good good data. We'll see if we can regain some of those views. It is during an orbital during an orbital daytime. Space station and Starliner spacecraft are about 62 statute miles over the Pacific Ocean.
Propulsion officer reporting 12 good crew module jets. The team just did a quick hot fire of those crew module jets. They are the very small RCS thrusters. It was just a checkout of the system. That's the those are the jets that will position Starliner during its return to Earth. The service module carries most of the but at the very end of the flight, which is coming up later today, the service module will separate and the crew module will fly on its own. And this hot fire test was confirming that those 12 thrusters are performing well. And again, propulsion reporting that all 12 jets did exactly what they were supposed to during that very hot fire test. Next up, we're coming up on the departure resume burn. That is going to
All right, everything's looking good for Starliner's departure. We're coming up in that turn in about 10 seconds. And we dig it. And we did pass the departure resume burn milestone. Flight officer very happy with the trajectory of Starliner as it makes its way towards exiting the approach ellipsoid. Things looking good for Starliner's departure from the International Space Station. We're still tracking an exit of that approach ellipsoid in about 6 minutes or so.
And you know, we talk, as we mentioned a lot, we talk a lot about the machines, we talk a lot about the spacecraft and the mechanics of orbital flight and everything like that. And you know, none of this gets done without people, and it takes a lot of folks to do stuff this complex. It is, you see him there on the right side of the screen in the blue shirt. That is Rick Kressig. He is one of the ground control. We call him GC, and he is he's working his in space flight. He's been in the business more than 30 years, and he is retiring. Flight Director Mike Lammers congratulating him, and so Rick will be going from spaceflight to his retirement. Great help to us on the Starliner team. He's one of the folks who a number of different things here in the control room, and does magnificent work. So on behalf of all of us on the Starliner team, congratulations. Thank you. To monitor Starliner's pace and course itself autonomously. No crew on board Starliner, and the crew of the International Space Station having bid farewell. With all of its major burns completed, we're about 3 minutes away from Flight Test 2 mission. All of this being set on a course to at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. That landing set for 5:49 p.m. Houston time, 6:49 p.m. And locally there at the landing site, it will be 4:49 p.m. in the Mountain Time Zone.
Starliner right on track to meet that landing. Of course, we've been following the missions. You're seeing some of the telemetry following the Starliner spacecraft itself as it separated from the International Space Station right on time earlier this afternoon, p.m. Central Time, and has been making its slow and methodical exit and departure from the space station to head towards that landing. Ellipsoid was the yellow circle that you have in view. You would be correct. That marker is the end of joint operations with the International Space Station flight control teams. The Starliner control teams will carry the vehicle all the way back to a landing in the western United States. It's about a little more than 3 hours from the time we exit that yellow sphere there to the time in the western United States. That exit's anticipated about a minute from now. We'll wait for confirmation from the teams that has, of course, exited the approach ellipsoid. It is at this point more than a kilometer away from the station. We're tracking about 1,100 meters.
And about 30 seconds left before Starliner leaves the approach ellipsoid. We are still getting great views of the spacecraft space station. You're seeing there Starliner against the daylit surface of the Earth. In fact, that is board. And in the foreground there to the right, that's the solar panel from a commercial vehicle, not another commercial crew vehicle, but a commercial cargo vehicle called Cygnus. Camera view continuing to track Starliner exactly where it needs to be. About 20 seconds away from the approach ellipsoid exit. Entry cover closed and latched. And of course, zooming.
Station Houston, space to ground 2 for Starliner. Starliner has exited the approach ellipsoid and is on E2 deactivation. This is your last Starliner, the approach ellipsoid, and is on a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. We're beginning. This is your last Starliner status call until the deorbit burn.
Station copies. Thanks for the update. Godspeed, Starliner.
Speed Starliner.
And with that, you heard that the International Space Station crew, Starliner spacecraft, has officially exited the approach ellipsoid. So that 24-hour free drift safe trajectory is just as a precautionary thing, just in case Starliner needed to. It would be able to stay in an orbit for 24 hours with in a safe trajectory, not with any space station, any risk of contact. So that is a standard free drift trajectory that it's on. But with that confirmation, that of course has been relayed up to the International Space Station crew. They're relieved of their duties for monitoring, really up to the Starliner teams to get the Starliner home a little bit more from now.
Starliner flying its perfect course. First undocking from the forward station on time today at 1:36 p.m. Central Time. Now departing the approach ellipsoid a little bit more than an hour later. Really good for everything looking really good for Starliner. And across the hall, we're going to check in one more time with Leah Cheshire, who's been looking at the ISS perspective team, as they have watched just as eagerly as the Starliner control team as the Boeing Starliner spacecraft has left the vicinity, the immediate, as they have watched just as eagerly as the Starliner control team as the Boeing Starliner spacecraft has left the vicinity, the immediate vicinity.
Absolutely, Steve, and thanks so much. Of course, since the Starliner vehicles out of the approach ellipsoid, joint operations have now ceased between all of the systems aboard the station itself and across the hall. And with that successful departure from the approach ellipsoid, that's our final checkpoint from the space station. Thank you so much for having us and allowing us to be part of the mission. We're excited to see Starliner back again in the future. Thanks, and back over to you, Steve and Gary.
All right, thank operations with the International Space Station teams, but of course, the mission is not over. We'll soon be wrapping up our coverage of the Starliner's undocking and departure from the International Space. We'll continue to follow the Starliner for a landing in the western desert near the landing site in White Sands Space Harbor, New Mexico. That'll be 3:45 p.m. Mountain Time. But Steve, it's been a pleasure to follow this mission through its undocking and exit. It was a very successful undocking and exit, and so we'll be looking forward to seeing the Starliner very soon coming home.
Boeing Starliner spacecraft has been for this orbital flight test 2 mission. It's been put through a lot of different paces, just as you're supposed to do with a flight test, and so far working very, very well and going well. Can't wait to see this landing. Starliner is going to go through one of the more dynamic phases of the mission as it plunges through Earth's atmosphere, encounters that heat, of course, opens the parachutes and comes down in White Sands Space Harbor, where our teams, both from Boeing and from NASA, are standing by to welcome it back to Earth after what's been a mission.
That's right. And of course, tune in for our coverage of those events. But for the teams here in the Starliner Flight Control Room and the International Room, that'll wrap up our coverage for now. Stay tuned for the landing coverage coming up in just a couple of hours. With that, this is Mission Control Houston.